But I want to talk about spiritual battle and worship. And the basis of all spiritual battle really comes down to a battle over worship. It's a battle over worship. Who is your God? And who is going to get your attention? Who is going to get your affection? Because whoever you listen to, whoever you take advice from, whoever you serve, that is your God. That is who you will worship. And so we're going to look through Scripture and see the battlegrounds of worship and look at them through a little bit different lens maybe than what we've looked at them before in the past. The first is the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden was the first battlefield, if you will. The battle for worship began in the Garden of Eden. The first thing that Satan gets Eve to do is doubt the Word of God. That's his first strategy, to get you to doubt the Word of God. Satan said to Eve, "Has God indeed said you shall not eat of every tree of the garden?" I mean, did God really say that? Did he really say don't eat of every tree? And then Satan attacks the character of God. You know, because Eve says, yeah. And he says, if we eat of that tree, we're going to die. And Satan says, God lied to you. You will not die. You're not going to die. So he attacks God's character. And if God is a liar, then he can't be trusted. Right? Can't trust God, which is an issue of faith. Faith is trust. And so he immediately undermines her faith. And then he says, God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. And so God is not good. He's trying to keep something from you. And you know, these three things kind of creep into our minds in different ways. God, you know, I'll give you an example. One of those ways is we would get blessed. I wrote songs. We get blessed with royalties and different things. And I never knew when they're coming. So all of a sudden a check would come in and be like, oh, wow, we got blessed. And my wife said, yeah, it's probably something bad's going to happen, and we need it for something. It's going to be taken from us, you know. So God's not good. He's not good because it's going to be taken from us. If he was good, he would just bless us. And that was a perspective we had to change. We had to shift our minds, which is what repentance is, right? Change your mind about God, about who he is and what he does. And I had to change my mind about God. And so this results, this attack, and Eve giving into it and Adam giving into it, results in man being separated from God. And God judges Satan and said, because you've done this, you are cursed. And God puts him in the same category as a beast of the field. And God tells him he will eat dust and go on his belly. He's going to be humiliated. And that's what Satan does to everyone that attempts to follow God. He wants to humiliate them. And so God reveals his future plan to destroy Satan. I will put enmity between your seed and her seed, which is Jesus. You will bruise his heel, but he will crush your head. He is going to destroy you. This is what they call the proto-evangelium. It's the first appearance of the gospel in the scriptures. And this basically sets the stage now for the battle of worship, the battle over who will be worshiped. And so from this point forward, the first strategy of Satan is to destroy the seed from being born, to destroy the seed from being born. So we come to the other battlefields of worship, Cain and Abel in Genesis chapter 4. If God is trying to destroy the seed and the seed is coming through man, then we're going to destroy man. And if we can't destroy man, we're going to corrupt man. So by Cain killing Abel, Abel is destroyed and Cain is corrupted. God can't use a corrupt vessel. That's the idea. And so because of this, it really comes down to an issue of worship. We're going to keep the Messiah, the seed, from being born so that God won't be worshiped. But God provides Seth. another baby. Satan corrupts the human race and almost succeeds in Genesis chapter 6. We read that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And so imagine everybody in the world whose thoughts and intents were continually evil. I mean, we're only, in our country, we only experience it on one side of the aisle, not on the other side. But imagine everybody is thinking evil all the time. The Lord said, I will destroy man because every person was corrupted by Satan. But he found one, Noah. And Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Satan attempts to corrupt the human race again at the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11. The Tower of Babel was a place where Satan again attempted to launch a program to corrupt man and spread wickedness throughout all the earth. But before Satan could succeed, God confused the language and scattered the people across the face of the earth. And so he again stopped Satan from keeping the seed from being born. And Babel becomes Babylon. Babylon continues to influence the world to this day. Babylon is where the first religion was born that was anti-God. And so God calls one man out of Babylon, Abraham. In the Hebrew, it's Abraham. He makes a covenant with Abraham to bless the world. I'm going to bless the world through you. I'm going to give you the land. I'm going to bless the world through you. The condition is you don't worship other gods. You don't worship idols. That's the condition. Why? Because all those other gods are not gods at all. They're demons, fallen angels. And so they are the enemies of God. So every religion that exists on the world today, in the world today, all of them, Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, every single one of them is an attack against God. And every single one of them is an attack against God's people. That's why there will never be any peaceful coexistence with other religions. So I don't know if you have them out here. I haven't seen any of them out here, but in California, especially in South Orange County, they're all over the place where it says coexista, and it has all the symbols of all the different religions. That bumper sticker will never happen. Because every other religion is an attack against God. The demonic powers that control them are out to steal, kill, and destroy the creation that God made, mankind. So worship is the battlefield. It's a battle over who will be worshiped. You fast forward it to Moses with Pharaoh, where God takes on the gods of Egypt. You know, Pharaoh comes into power who is not friendly with Israel. The Pharaoh afflicts Israel, makes their life bitter with bondage, it says. They cry out to God. God sees their affliction, hears their cries, and God sends Moses to Pharaoh to deliver a message. Let my people go that they might worship me in the wilderness. It wasn't just let my people go out of bondage. There was a reason for it. They were to go and worship the Lord. There was a purpose. Let my people go worship is what the message is. And then Pharaoh responds, who is the Lord? And why should I care? Why should I worship him and obey him? And that's a fair question, right? If someone doesn't know who the Lord is and they want to know who the Lord is, that's a fair question. It's an honest question. And so God introduces himself to Pharaoh using 10 plagues. The first few plagues, Pharaoh says, that's nothing. My guys can do that. But then the blood turning the Nile River into blood, that was an attack against Hapi, the god of the Nile. The frogs that filled the land, that was an attack against Heket, the goddess of fertility. But then when it got to the lice was an attack against Geb, the god of the earth. When that happened, the magicians told Pharaoh, we can't do that one. That is above our pay grade. That's something else going on here. So God is educating Pharaoh and giving him an opportunity to do the right thing, to let God's people go and worship him. But Pharaoh says, no way, I'm not going to do it. So God goes on. He attacks Kephro, the god of creation, by sending swarms of beasts into the land. Then he attacks Hathor, the goddess of love and protection, by sending a pestilence. And then he attacks Isis, the goddess of medicine and peace, by sending boils. And again he comes to Pharaoh and he says, now will you let my people go worship? I mean, you want to know who I am. Now I'm showing you who I am. I'm a God of power and might, more powerful than your gods. And Pharaoh says, no, I'm not going to let them go. And so God begins to educate him even further. He attacks Nut, who is the goddess of the sky, by sending hail. Then he attacks Set, the god of storms and disaster, by sending locusts. And finally, he attacks Ra, the sun god, by sending darkness. Now you have to understand, Pharaoh, Paro, was the representative of Ra on the earth. The representative of Ra. And so Pharaoh was worshipped as God, considered the most powerful in the land of Egypt. And so after the third set of three, Moses goes to Pharaoh again and says, let my people worship. And Pharaoh says no. And so then Moses says something very interesting. He says, I'm done talking to you. No more revelation. God's educated you. He's shown you his power. He's not going to talk to you anymore. And after that, that's when God gives the revelation to Moses to put the blood on the doorpost of the home. And if they see the blood, they will pass over the home. You know who didn't get that revelation? Pharaoh. Why? Because he was done. I'm not talking to you anymore. And so the last plague was an attack against Pharaoh himself, the killing of the firstborn, who was the ultimate power in Egypt. And that's when Passover was instituted. Where the nation of Israel was passed over when they saw the blood of the lamb on the doorpost. And so Pharaoh says, okay, I give up. Go worship. And then he changes his mind. I mean, you got to think this guy's crazy. Or Biden. He's crazy. And so then he chases after Israel, right? He goes after Israel. Israel, Tom beautifully painted the picture of Israel going across on dry land. And then Pharaoh comes behind him, chasing them. And God closes the Red Sea and destroys the armies of Pharaoh. And again, the entire incident is an issue over worship. Pharaoh would not let them go and worship the Lord. And so through this, God demonstrates that he alone is God through his superior power. That he is God. God delivers them out of Egypt, brings them through the wilderness into the promised land, and he makes a covenant with them based on his loyal love to them. I am loyal to you, and I love you, and this is the covenant I'm making with you. And so from this time forward, from this point forward, God will remind the people over and over again, even going into Isaiah and the later prophets, he says, I am the one who brought you out of Egypt. I carried you on eagle's wings. I brought you to myself. That's what I want. I want you for me. I want you to be a special treasure to me. And I only ask that you keep the covenant that we have together, that you obey my voice, which is his commands. And so the covenant that God makes through Moses is summarized by what is referred to as the Great Shema. The Great Shema. And we find it in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 5. It says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And the word there, it means that the Lord is the only one. Not the most powerful one, not the best one, but the only one. He is the only one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And he tells them, you shall not go after other gods, the gods of the people who are all around you. For the Lord your God is a jealous God among you, lest the anger of the Lord be aroused against you and destroy you from the face of the earth. And so the Bible says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. Now, the word God that is used here is in the plural tense, Elohim. As I said earlier, the singular is El, the dual tense is Eloah, and the tense for three or more is Elohim. And thus we have the Trinity, the triune God, that God is three in one. Now, the word that's used for one in the Hebrew is one of two words that is used to signify the one. There's the word Yachim and the word Echad. The word Yachim means that God is the absolute one. He's the absolute one. He's an absolute one. Like the one. Like there's not two, not three. There's absolutely just one. But the other word is Echad. And Echad speaks of a compound unity. A compound unity. For instance, if I were to talk about my wife, and it says that they are one flesh, so my wife and I, we are echad. We are one. We're a compound unity, right? We're not one, absolutely one, but we're kind of a complicated one. That's what people say about us. It's kind of complicated. So we're a compound unity. But if I were to say that I lived on my boat in the harbor, that I could say that my wife and I, my home is Yachim, my boat and my home is Yachim, that means they are exactly the same. They're the absolute one. There's only one place. They're both the one thing. They're one and the same. And so when it says the Lord our God, the Lord is Echad, it's a compound unity. And so we can have Elohim, Echad, three, is one, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. A compound unity. But had Moses declared, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is Yachim, then you could not say that the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are God. Because one means absolutely one. And that would be seen as three. That's really the problem that most Jews have with, Orthodox Jews have with receiving Jesus as the Son of God. Because in their mind, when we say that we believe in a triunity of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, they're saying you're an idolater because you worship three gods. But because Moses said echad and not yachim, then it's a compound unity. The three are one. And that is the foundation of our worship. But the issue is one of loyal love. He says, you will love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That you're not going to love other gods. You're not going to go after other gods. You're going to go for the Lord alone. He's to be your magnificent obsession. And so the first thing we need to understand is that going all the way back to the book of Genesis, even till now, every battle that you see in the Bible, every battle that you see in the scriptures, in Kings and Samuel and Numbers or going into Chronicles, they're all battles over worship. Who is God? Whose God is to be worshipped? Whose God is to rule over the land? And when Israel worshiped the one true and living God, God took care of them. God watched over them. God protected them. God rescued them out of their distress. He healed them. He restored them. But when Israel began to worship other gods, God said to them, you've forsaken me and served other gods, therefore I will deliver you no more. Go and cry out to the other gods which you have chosen. Call them for help. Since you're worshiping them, see if they'll help you. Let them deliver you out of your distress. Now, this didn't only apply to Israel, but it applied to all nations, to everybody. You come to Babylon in the book of Daniel. In Daniel chapter 5, verse 22, it says, but you, his son Belshazzar, who was the second Babylonian king under whom Daniel served, have not humbled your heart, although you knew all this, and you have lifted yourself up against the Lord of heaven. They have brought the vessels of his house before you, and you and your lords, your wives and your concubines have drunk wine from them. And you have praised the gods of silver and gold. There's people praising the gods of silver and gold today. Bronze and iron, wood and stone, which do not see or hear or know. And the God who holds your breath in his hand and owns all your ways, you have not glorified. And so we read in Daniel chapter 5, verse 30, that Belshazzar was slain that night. He died. You know, people may choose their leaders. They may elect them into office. But all authority comes from the Lord. And God holds every leader, every world leader, responsible for how they use the authority that has been entrusted to them by God. And Belshazzar did not humble his heart, but lifted himself up against the Lord of heaven. He did not honor the Lord who gave him life. Instead, he praised gods made out of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. He worshiped gods that could not hear him or see him or know him. And when he needed help, they could not deliver him in his time of his distress. They couldn't protect him from being assassinated. They're powerless to help because they are not gods at all. They are not God. In other words, Belshazzar was on the wrong side of the battle. He was on the wrong side. And this is an essential truth of worship, that there is only one God. There is only one God. God isn't the greatest God above all gods. He's not the most powerful God. He's the only God. Every other being is a created being. Satan was a created being, an angel created by God who fell. That's why Satan can't read your mind. He can't tell the future. He has limited power. He doesn't have the ability to create anything. All Satan can do is hear what you say, and he's been alive a long time, right? So what you say, he listens to. The words that come out of your mouth, he hears, and he'll use them against you. He exists in time and space. And so when you see these fortune tellers, and they're telling you the future, what they're telling you is what Satan's plan for your life is. And I know people that have listened to fortune tellers or horoscopes and all those things, and they buy into the plan of the enemy for their life. It's not really what's going to happen, but they're just telling you in advance what they're going to do to you. That's all they can do. They can't create, they can only pervert and corrupt what is created. Take what God has meant for beauty and make it something else. So every false god, every religion worships demons. And their false prophets are demon-possessed. And their worship practices are possession rituals. And often people knowingly or unknowingly open themselves to demonic possession and oppression by worshiping these false gods. And that's why God despises other religions, because they place man under bondage. God meant man to be free and for man to have freedom in loving him and for nothing to get in the way of it. And so I'm just letting you know how God sees these things. And so in our country, or in our city, they're having what they're calling a color run. A color run is actually a Hindu worship festival. And everybody thinks it's no big deal. They're just going to run 5K and sprinkle colorful dust on each other. That's all it is. It's just fun for the kids. I said, no, they're grooming them for Hinduism. They're giving them an open heart to Hinduism. Except, and so they're opening themselves up to demonic power. We had a Christian school that was meeting actually at our church initially, and until I found this out, and they posted something on Instagram that we begin every morning with mindful meditation. And they showed a picture of a Tibetan Buddhist monk devotional that they were going through. So when I saw that, I said, not at my church, God's church. You're not going to do that. So I posted right on Instagram, you might want to think about not doing that anymore because you're opening up these kids to demonic power. That didn't go over well. And so you have to see it from God's perspective. There's only one God, and everything else is not God. And so now the battle lines are drawn. Now we fast forward this to Jesus. Jesus said, I have come to destroy the works of the devil. Satan tried to prevent the seed from being born. He didn't succeed. Jesus was born. And so now his tactic is to steal, to kill, to destroy through deception. And if he can't kill the seed, then let's make sure that there's no one left to rule and reign over. We'll just corrupt everybody. And when asked what would be the number one sign of his coming, Jesus said, take heed that no one deceives you. And one of the primary ways that Satan deceives you is to confuse you as to who the enemy is. That's why something we've been talking about on the radio programs and different things is about churches that have become woke. that have become accepting of things that are actually evil and wicked practices in the Bible, that have been given over to deception, because now they don't know who the enemy is. They no longer know who they're fighting. And so if you don't know who the enemy is, you're going to find yourself fighting the wrong battle or worshiping the wrong gods. And that's what has happened in my city. We see people worshiping the wrong gods. They've blended. It's called syncretism, where you take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and then you mix it all together and you make your own kind of religion. In our culture, I don't want to ruin anybody's Christmas or Easter, but that's what happened with Christmas and Easter. There's no Christmas and Easter in the Bible. Easter was the worship of Ishtar, the goddess of fertility, and Christmas was the worship of the sun god, the birth of the sun god. And so Constantinople, under the law of, the peace of Rome, hey, we want to make everyone get along, and so we'll take these pagan holidays, we'll throw a little Jesus in there, and we'll kind of blend it all together. So everybody, let's just not fight over it. Let's just have one holiday where we all get along. And that's what happened to our holidays, syncretism. I don't know what to do with that now. You'll have to figure it out on your own. But it's impacted our culture. So we need to know who we're dealing with, who the enemy is. In Ephesians 6:12, it says, "We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." Paul identifies four enemies, four categories of enemies: principalities, powers, rulers of darkness of this age, spiritual hosts of wickedness in heavenly places. Now, the first one is principalities. And principalities demand sacrificial worship. They demand sacrificial worship. The Greek word for principalities is arche. And that word arche means first or beginning. And so this refers to the demonic powers that have existed from the very beginning. Now, they may have different names today, but it's the same demonic power. For instance, the moon goddess that was worshipped during the time of the building of the Tower of Babel in Babylon. Centuries later, that same moon goddess goes by the name of Allah. Allah is the moon goddess. Same symbol. If you look at the same symbol back then versus the symbol today, exact same symbol, different name. Some of those principalities that are around today is Baal, the most mentioned in the scripture, 60 times. It means Lord Possessor. And this is the God that rules over addictions, wants to possess you. And so addictions is not an issue of, I want something. Addiction is a worship issue. You have bowed your knee to Baal, and you are serving him and worshiping him. It's the same spirit that rules over oppressive governments. The next one is Asherah. It's 45 times mentioned. It's the goddess of sex, pornography. And so when you view pornography, it's a worship issue. It's not a lust issue. It's a worship issue. You are bowing the knee to a false god, to a demonic power. That's why it has such a hold on people. Molech is the third, 16 times. Abortion and homosexuality. I find it interesting that the people that are protesting what they perceive to be the anti-abortion laws are lesbian women, homosexual women, not mothers. There's no mothers out there protesting. It's homosexual women. Why? Because part of the worship of Molech was homosexuality. Chemosh, also known as Lichmas, and 8 times mentioned, is the subduer, the one who conquers. Diana, 5 times, the mother god. You've heard of Mother Earth. You know, I saw a church that was worshiping good mother. That's the worship of Diana. It's a demonic power. It's not just, God is male and female together. It's just the father and the mother together. That's all God. No, that's demonic. It's a demonic teaching. Ishtar is false religion. Ishtar was known as the Queen of Heaven. There's a whole church built on the Queen of Heaven that has embraced the teachings of Ishtar. Tartuk was the prince of darkness. Marduk was the god of genocide. You see that happening in the Ukraine right now. You wonder what's happening over there? It's not a political issue. It's a worship issue, a spiritual issue. Marduk is demanding sacrifice. And he's receiving it through the Russians. Mercury is New Age mysticism and channeling. The channeling of gods. Mercury was the messenger god. And so a lot of the New Age channelers that you see, they're worshiping Mercury. They're under control of this principalities. Anamelech, the moon goddess Isis, who is Allah. And so all of these things have been around from the very beginning. They just reinvent themselves in every culture and every generation. And they have a new way to infiltrate and gain power. That's principalities. Then you have powers. And powers, it's the word exousia. And exousia speaks of legal authority. Legal authority. And so this gains power through deception. Deception is when you allow yourself to believe a lie. It's gained through willful choice in that you choose to give up your rights. And it's gained through unbelief. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't believe it anyhow. And it operates in the realm of law. And so powers includes judges and lawmakers. I find it interesting that the system of law we have in our country, which was supposed to apply the existing law, is now making law through its decisions. Those are powers. And powers demand that you bow down to them. That you bow down to them. The attack on the Chief Justices right now in the Supreme Court over the abortion ruling. What's really going on there? Well, what's really going on there is Molech is upset because Molech requires child sacrifice. And Molech realizes that this law, this powerful law, is going to rob them of their power to demand child sacrifice. The Emergency Powers Act that was used to shut down churches in California. What's going on? The government using this law to stop worship service. Well, the self-appointed gods of this age do not want God's people to worship. The pharaohs of this age do not want people to worship God. And so they have created a way to stop the worship of God. This is not a political issue, it's a worship issue. It's a battle over worship. Then you have rulers of darkness. Rulers of darkness include kings and presidents and senators and representatives and government and religious officials and leaders. And these are world influencers in positions of governing authority. That Satan will infiltrate leaders to implement his agenda to steal, kill, and destroy. And rulers of darkness demand to be treated like God. You're not going to challenge me. You're going to bow to me. I think of Putin and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the basis of which is the hatred of the Jewish people. It's not about the land. It's a hatred of God's people. The Squad and the eliminating of the funding of Israel's Iron Dome system. What's going on there? They want to see God's people destroyed. In California, the support for the AB 2223 on abortion. Wanting to see the innocent lives of babies killed and legalized. It's a worship issue. Then you have hosts of wickedness in high places. These are cultural influencers who use their influence to promote wickedness. And wickedness is any lifestyle or behavior that does not originate from God. That's how God defines wickedness. This includes television, music, news, sports, social media, cultural personalities. And cultural influencers demand to be heard, and they want to be adored, worshiped. And each of these cultural influencers unashamedly promote wickedness. Taylor Swift actively promotes the LGBTQ community. Ellen DeGeneres, Miley Cyrus, Bruce Jenner. I mean, the craziest thing I ever saw was Bruce Jenner, I won't call him by his whatever he calls himself, on Fox News saying, "I am one of the only rational people out there." That's called deception. Lady Gaga, the Kardashians, Katy Perry with now false religion and rebellion. She began, I have a CD of her where it says, "When I grow up, I want to be like you," a worship leader. Rihanna, who's into witchcraft. Some of these people are in your home, on your radios. And it's an issue of worship. Not only are they promoting wickedness, but their agenda is to force people into normalizing wickedness. We want it to be normal and acceptable in the culture. Plus, it just sounds fun. It has a good beat. And so the battle is worship, which means the weapon is worship. In 2 Corinthians 10, it says, "For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh, for the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ, and being ready to punish all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled." And so all four enemies, principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, host of wickedness, high places, are fighting to be worshiped, to be bowed down to be adored, for you to put your time and attention on focusing on them. And thus the battle is a battle over who you are going to worship. Now, I understand that worship is a lifestyle, that worship is more than singing. But there is an activity of worship where I actively love the Lord with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, with every part of my being. And when I do that, there are four things that happen in my life. When I love the Lord with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, when everything in me is focused on Him and Him alone, these four things happen. First, strongholds are pulled down, arguments are cast down, high things are torn down, and thoughts are taken down. Thoughts are taken down. So the first thing, strongholds are pulled down. It says in 2 Samuel 22, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, the God of my strength, in whom I will trust, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold and my refuge, my Savior. You save me from violence. I will call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. And so he talks about the pulling down of strongholds. And now a stronghold is something that you make. It's not something that, it's not evil, it's not demonic, it's something that I create. It's a fortified place of self-protection that you build in your life to protect yourself from perceived violence or traumatic events. But David said, God is my stronghold. And so what a stronghold does is it takes the place of God in your life. And it becomes a place where the enemy can influence your life. It's usually built on a lie about God. God didn't save me from that situation, so I have to protect myself. And so we build fortified places in our minds that we run to in times of distress, and this becomes one of the first battlegrounds of worship. And that stronghold in your mind can be, oh man, there's so much pressure right now. What I need is a glass of wine. That will help me unwind. And so what do? When the pressure turns on? You go right to your stronghold to find comfort. As long as the enemy can keep you locked in the walls of your self-made fortress, your tower of defense, he can manipulate you. And so to worship the Lord is to surrender your life completely to Jesus, to say every part of my life belongs to you. You are the one I trust. You are my defender. You are the strength of my salvation. You are the fortified place that I run to. You save me from the violence, so I will call upon you, and I will be saved from my enemies. And often this happens through a truth encounter. Lies are replaced with the truth, and the stronghold you've built as self-protection is replaced with God as your stronghold, as you choose to believe what God says over what your experience says. I'm not going to believe my experience. Whatever happened to me in my past, in my childhood, whatever it is, I'm not going to believe that. I'm going to believe what God says. And I'm going to put my trust in him. We sang that song, You Are My Hiding Place. You always fill my heart with songs of deliverance. Whenever I am afraid, I'm going to trust in you. I'm going to trust in you. Let the weak say, I am strong in the strength of the Lord. Secondly, arguments are cast down. In Psalm 73, it says, Behold, these are the ungodly who are always at ease. They increase in riches. Surely I have cleansed my heart in vain and washed my hands in innocence. For all day long I have been plagued and chastened every morning until I went into the sanctuary of God, into the place of worship, and then I understood their end. I thought they had it good until I went before God and I saw what he sees. An argument is a logical conclusion that you come to, usually based on an experience about what is true from your perspective, not God's perspective. And the enemy is an expert at psyops. He invented it. Deception. To get you to believe your experience over God's word. I'll give you an example. Many people don't believe in healing because they've never experienced healing, or maybe they prayed for healing and their prayer wasn't answered. Becomes even more prominent if you prayed for healing and someone died. You know, in my church, there was a guy that came to me with a heart issue, and so he said, would you pray for me? I said, sure, I believe God heals, and I prayed for him. It got worse. So he asked me never to pray for him again. But he got better after that. And so you have this logical conclusion. God doesn't heal, doctors heal. I don't need God. I just go right to the doctor. I trust in the doctor. And what I keep telling our churches, they're just practicing physicians. That's why you're supposed to be patient till they get it right. God is the great physician. But as long as you believe that praying for healing won't work, you won't pray. And when it comes to worship, as long as you believe that worship doesn't matter, you're not going to worship. As long as you think that there's nothing powerful about singing songs together, you're not going to sing songs with people. It's not going to matter to you. What really happens when we do this? Who cares? That's what your thought's going to be. But notice what the psalmist said. He said, when I went into the sanctuary of God, then I understood. That's where I got the wisdom. When I went into the place of worship, then I got wisdom on what their end would be. And so I exchanged my perspective for God's perspective. There's an exchange that happens in the place of worship. As I encounter the presence of God, God shows me what real reality is. See, I don't know everything. I only know what I see. I only know what I've experienced. But God can show me the whole thing. He can show me why I went through what I went through and what he was doing in the midst of it. He can give me so much wisdom and revelation. I think of that song, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Third, high things are torn down. In 2 Kings 18, 4-6, it says that he removed the high places, broke the sacred pillars, cut down the wooden image, and broke in pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made. For until those days, the children of Israel burned incense to it and called it Nehushtan. He trusted in the Lord of Israel, so that after him was none like him among all the kings of Judah, nor who were before him, for he held fast to the Lord. He did not depart from following him, but kept his commandments, which the Lord had commanded Moses. And so he immediately went and tore down all the high things. This is a picture of an altar in the gates of Dan, the city of Dan, Tel Dan, in the north of Israel, where it was, and this is one of the high places. A high thing is anything that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. It's anything that competes for the place of God in your life in order to keep you from worshiping God. It is a place of idolatry in your life where you give yourself over to a demonic power. And of course, the moment you start messing with an idol's worship, there will be an intense battle. That's where the battle really begins. For instance, the minute you start saying, I'm not going to drink anymore, battle. All of a sudden, every commercial that has to do with alcohol, just all of a sudden it's like, wow, look, I never saw that commercial before. I used to tell people I didn't have a drinking problem. I had no problem drinking. I had a stopping problem. But the minute I tried to stop, battle. The minute you try to walk in purity, battle. All of a sudden, all kinds of things you never noticed before start popping out at you. Battle. Because you're messing with the high thing. Doesn't want to be torn down. An obsession that you have is a high place. People are obsessed with sports, hunting, and recreation. Hockey. To the point that those activities take the place of worshiping God. The love of money is a high place. Fulfillment of my desires, the acquisition of material possessions becomes my occupation. And worship confronts the idols in our lives. God does not compete. If he's not the only one, if he's not just number one, God isn't number one in your life. He's the only one. He doesn't compete. And if he's not the only one, then he'll let you have what you want. Because he loves you. And he wants to give you the desires of your heart, even if it's not him. And he'll wait patiently as you discover how empty and useless and powerless and unfulfilling the worship of other gods is. And he'll just wait. Because he doesn't want to be first in your life. He wants to be your life. And so worship gives us the language to tear down the high things in our heart, the high places. I think of that song that Graham Kendrick wrote, to keep your lovely face ever before my eyes. This is my prayer, make it my strong desire that in my secret heart no other love competes, no rival throne survives, and I serve only you. And finally, thoughts are taken down. In 1 John 5 it says, whoever believes that Jesus is the Christ is born of God. Everyone who loves him, who begot, also loves him who is begotten of him. By this we know that we love the children of God when we love God and keep his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome. For whatever is born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that we have, that he has overcome the world, our faith. So bringing every thought into the captivity of the obedience of Christ and being ready to punish all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled. And a thought is any activity of the mind that keeps you from obeying Jesus. Whatever reason you're giving yourself to not do something. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm busy. I got a lot to do. And this is one of the most intense battlegrounds for worship, that is of obedience. Now, the Greek philosophers would preoccupy themselves with all kinds of reasons why people are a certain way, why they act a certain way. You know, you act the way you do because you didn't get enough hugs as a baby. And so it gives you an excuse, a justification for disobedience. You know, for some of us, our inner child needs a spanking. But you've heard people say, well, I'm angry because I'm Irish. You know, I'm intense because I'm Italian. Or I'm stern because I'm German. My wife is a German Swede. So she's pretty, but she's bossy. And then I found out that she's got probably 2% Jew in her. So she's 2% Jewish, so she asks a lot of questions. And it'd be easy to say, well, this is just who I am, and have an excuse. That's a thought that needs to be taken down. Worship is based on the worthiness of the object being worshiped, not the ability of the person offering worship. So I worship Jesus because he is worthy of worship. Thus, as I worship him, I'm bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. And as I obey him, my obedience becomes an act of worship to him. That's why when you obey the Lord, all of a sudden you feel joy. When you're in the middle of a battle, you say, I'm going to choose this, and you choose what God wants you to choose, you just, I just feel so happy right now. Because that's worship. You've just worshiped the Lord through your obedience. One of the words for worship, latreo, can also be translated service, and that implies obedience. And so to worship God is to obey God. We used to sing a song in the Jesus movement, I will serve thee because I love thee. It's actually written by the Gaithers. You have given life to me. I was nothing until you found me. You have given life to me. Heartaches, broken pieces, ruined lives are why you died on Calvary. Your touch is what I long for. You have given life to me. And so as we worship the Lord, the enemy is defeated. Every one of these strongholds, arguments, thoughts, high places, principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, wickedness in high places are all defeated by Jesus, and worship celebrates that fact. I think of, I'm going over, is that okay? Okay, because it's 4:01. Is that okay? All right, good, all right. Clock's fast? I like that answer. I just want to tell a story. When we were in Ohio, we were in this little town, and we were set up on one corner doing an outreach. Across the street from us was Black Lives Matter. They were protesting. And then on another corner right next to them was All Lives Matter. And then on the other corner was Blue Lives Matter. And then there were 3 police units, and one of them was a canine unit. And then there was the farmers market right next door to us, right behind us. And so it's starting to get heated. The Black Lives Matter people are protesting, and then all the other groups are starting to protesting. They're starting to walk towards each other in the middle of the street. And then the added dynamic is in the middle of this is a Trump rally that comes through with saying, go Trump, with the flags and everything. And every time the Trump guys would go by, then the Black Lives Matter would put out their rainbow flags and start cussing them out. And it was starting to get really intense. And then I get called over to the farmers market people. We want to talk to you. It's like, okay. He goes, what are you guys here, protesting for? You're Christians, aren't you? Aren't you supposed to be unifying everybody? And I'm like, listen, we're not here protesting anything. We just want to share the love of Jesus. That's why we're here. And so it's getting heated. And we looked at everyone and says, what are we going to do? And they said, let's just go for it. So we prayed, and then I stood up, and we just started to worship the Lord. As soon as we started to worship the Lord, there was almost like a hush that fell on the whole block. Everybody stopped protesting, and they all started listening. And then by the end of the evening, they stayed quiet for the whole night, the whole presentation, testimony, preaching. And at the end of the night, some of the Black Lives Matter people put their signs in their trunks and came over, and we did some we worshiped the Lord at the end of it, and they began singing with us. But what's crazy is that one of the farmers market people posted on Facebook, this incredible thing happened in my city today. There was Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, and then this gospel outreach. And as soon as they started playing the music, all of these protesters were swaying to the sound of gospel music. They were all worshiping the Lord. In other words, the Lord said, no, I'm the one that gets the worship, not you. The worship of God destroyed the gods of that city. And that actually launched a revival where they continued to meet and do things together in that block. When Joshua took Jericho, it was a battle over worship. The city of Jericho was the center of worship for the moon god. The same moon god that God called Abraham to leave. The same one, the moon god of in Babylon, the same moon god here in Jericho. There was a tower, a high tower that was built as a high place to the worship of this moon god. And so God commands Joshua to put the armed men first, the elite soldiers. Next are the 7 priests with the 7 shofars, followed by the Ark of the Covenant. Behind the ark is the rear guard made up of the other tribes of Israel. And they walk around 6 days in silence around the city. And on the 7th day, they were to walk around the city 7 times, and after the 7th time, they were to blow the shofars and shout. Now you have to understand, what are they doing when they're walking around the city? The enemy's in the middle. The ark is with them. What does the ark represent? The presence of God. So what are they doing as they walk around the city? They're surrounding the city with the presence of God. That's what they're doing. They're surrounding the city with they're surrounding the enemy with the presence of God. That's what we do when we worship. We're surrounding the enemy with the presence of God. And it's basically saying to the enemy, listen, it's not looking so good for you because God is here. And by doing this, God is challenging the moon god of Israel to a showdown. And on the seventh day, they blow the shofar. And it's very interesting, the implication of this word, because when they would go into battle, they had trumpets that were made, that were silver, that they would use to move the armies of Israel into battle. But here, God instructs them to use a shofar, to blow the shofar. Why? Because the shofar was used to call the nation to worship. So when the shofar was blown, it wasn't a call to battle. It was a call to worship. And the word that is used here when it says they shouted, it was a shout of praise. It was a shout of worship. And so as they worshiped the Lord, the walls fell flat. And then they rushed in and destroyed the enemy. Let that picture be in your mind. When you worship God together, when you come together as a congregation and you're singing songs of praise and you are surrounding the enemy with the truth of God, it's a truth encounter, but it's not a truth encounter, between the people. It's a truth encounter of the people saying to the enemy, you don't belong here. God is the one that's going to be worshiped. And when the shofar is blown, it's a call to worship. And when the shout is given, it's a shout of worship. And you don't do anything. God does it. He destroys the enemy. That's the picture. So then how do I do battle through worship? First of all, you need to commit to being a worshiper. John 4:23, the hour is coming, we've heard it read, and now is when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father is seeking such to worship him. Are you a worshiper? Are you a worshiper? If you're not a worshiper, then I implore you, bow your knee to Jesus today and surrender your life to him. And be a worshiper. Be a worshiper. Second, commit to participating in worship. The psalmist said, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. He is our God. We are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Today, if you will hear his voice. And what's interesting, in Judaism, nowhere in Judaism would a Jew say, my worship is enough. I can just worship by myself, anywhere I want, and that's enough. They would never say that. What they would say is, God is so big and so worthy to be worshiped. I can't just do it by myself. I need to do it with my family. And then they would say, my family is not enough. I need to get other families to come and worship the Lord. And together we will do it. And then they'll say, this family group isn't enough. We need to get more people involved. We need to get the whole city involved. And they would say, this city is not enough to worship the Lord because he's worthy of so much more. We need to get the whole county. And the county isn't enough. We need to get the whole state. And this one state is not enough. We need all the states, the whole nation. And this nation is not enough. We need all the nations to worship the Lord. But it begins with you participating in worship. Also, teach your kids to worship. Deuteronomy 11:19, you shall teach them to your children, speaking of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up. All the things that God says to do. Teach your kids to be worshipers. They will do what they see you do. I tell my church this all the time. I know how you live at home by what your kids do. By how your kids talk. Because they'll just do what they see mom and dad do. Prioritize worship. Let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. Make worship a priority. There's a lot of good causes. There's a lot of good things to do. But nothing trumps worshiping the Lord. Make it the priority. I can't go do that. I have to worship the Lord. You know, in my town, I'm not competing against other churches. I'm competing against the beach. And I'm competing against sports. And I tell the parents, you know, you're telling your kid that sports is more important than the Lord. And when they grow up and they decide not to follow the Lord, and you're going to blame it on the school system, and you're going to blame it on the colleges that are leading our kids astray, and I'm going to look at you as a parent and say, why should they worship the Lord? You never showed them that worship was important. I know dads that, oh, I can't go to church, I got to work. And it's like, okay, so work is more important than the Lord. And I imagine what would happen if the Christians just said to the companies, hey, we can't work on Sundays, we got to go to church. All of a sudden, maybe some of those companies would reevaluate their policies. Prioritize worship. Get rid of idols. Deuteronomy 12 says, you shall utterly destroy all the places where the nations which you shall dispossess serve their gods on the high mountains and on hills and under every green tree. You shall destroy their altars, break their sacred pillars, burn their wooden images with fire. You shall cut down the carved images of their gods and destroy their names from that place. You shall not worship the Lord your God with such things. If you have bowed the knee to a false god, get rid of it. It's not worth it. If it means not having a computer, if it means not having, technology in order to preserve your integrity as a man of God, do it. Set a limitation on it. Make it something that happens only in crowded places. But get rid of the idols. If it's money, wealth, whatever it is. If you need to get rid of your money, I'll take it from you as a blessing. It's just I'm here to help you. And then the last thing is fill your home with worship. In Ephesians 5, it says, do not be drunk with wine, in which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody in your heart to the Lord, giving thanks always for all things to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. I had a friend that was the IT guy for the city of San Diego, and he was filled with anxiety. And it was an hour drive from where he lived to San Diego, and he would listen to talk radio, and his life was just filled with anxiety. And he decided what he was going to do is turn off the talk radio and just turn on worship. And he did it for 30 days, and his life changed. The anxiety went away, and he all of a sudden he got filled with peace again, because he turned his car into an atmosphere, a sanctuary of praise. You want a Christian family. You want a family that grows up worshiping the Lord. Fill it with worship. Fill it with worship. You want your kids not to be influenced by the host of wickedness in high places? Fill it with worship. Let worship be what consumes you. It will consume them. Because they love you and respect you, and they'll do what you do. And so this is how we fight the battle. We fight it with worship. And letting worship just emanate and fill our lives.